A majority of home sellers face a common predicament, and that predicament is, should I sell my home first, or should I find my next home, purchase it, and then sell my current home thereafter? If you sell your current home first, you gain the advantage of securing funds from the sale and knowing exactly what your current financial situation looks like before going out and purchasing your next home. While you do gain financial clarity by selling first, you do run the risk of being uncertain about where you'll live next, or maybe feeling like you have to settle with what you can find in such a short amount of time. If you buy your next home first, you gain the advantage of knowing exactly where you'll live next. This can make the transition from homes much smoother, especially when it comes to that moving process. However, you do run the risk of not selling your current home, or at least not receiving as much as you thought you would receive from the sale of that home. As a buyer, it can be super advantageous to identify particular pain points that a seller is facing. If this happens to be one of those pain points, it might be a good option to offer a lease-back agreement to that seller. Essentially, what this offer entails is that the buyer is willing to close on the home and actually lease that property back to the seller after closing. That way the seller has time to close on and move into their next home without having to face that homelessness risk or a double move situation. And if you're a buyer, this can be a super valuable term that you can add to your offer that'll really make that offer stand out. In order to make this agreement work, it's important to get the terms of the agreement in writing as part of the offer. Now, in order to make this agreement work, it's important to get all terms of the agreement in writing. You don't want to make this a handshake agreement between buyer and seller because you just run too much risk. You want both parties to be aware of the terms of the agreement before you sign off on it as a buyer or a seller. First, you want to establish a timeline. How long will the seller be permitted to stay in the home after closing? I've seen anywhere from 1 week to 90 days. 1 week makes a lot of sense if the seller is already under contract on their next home, but they're going to be closing a few days after your closing, or maybe they're closing the same day, but they would just like a few days to be able to move their stuff from their current home to their next home. And they're not allowed to access that next home until they've actually closed. Now, if you're doing a timeline of 30 to 90 days, this must mean a very flexible buyer and a seller that could really use the time. So that timeline is going to be a reflection of the problem that you're solving. Figuring out the flexibility of the buyer and seller is going to better help you both identify a timeline that you can agree on. Next, you want to determine what the rent rate is going to be. I've seen some buyers who wanted to be very competitive offer a free leaseback. In other words, they're not charging the seller any rent to stay. And this is much more common in those shorter time frames. If you're not going to do a free leaseback, you definitely want to run some numbers and determine what a fair rent rate will be for maintaining possession of that property. So once you've established the rent rate, you'll also want to determine a sum of money that can be placed into an escrow account should the seller not vacate the property within the established timeline. This is especially important to establish if you're doing a free leaseback. After all, if there's no money on the line and the seller is leasing back for free, they are going to have very little incentive to move out of the property. So you just want to make sure that there's something in place to penalize the seller should they not move out on time. And finally, you might want to do a third sum of money, which should be set aside should the seller damage the property after closing. So again, you're going to be doing 3 different dollar amounts. One for the rent, one for failure to vacate the property, and one for potential damages to the property, kind of like a security deposit. Whatever that total comes out to be, I recommend having that money deposited into an escrow account at closing. That way the seller has financial incentive to abide by the rules of the agreement, and having that third-party intermediary is something that I think is very beneficial just to make sure that the funds are deposited fairly. Having said that, there is usually a fee associated with that deposit. So you may want to determine who is going to be responsible for that fee. Beyond this financial agreement, you also want to make sure that you have in writing that both the buyer and seller are obligated to carry insurance. So both of you should just go ahead and reach out to your insurance agent, let them know of the situation, and they should be able to issue you a policy based on the situation with no problem. It's just super important that you maintain clarity with your insurance agent just in case anything goes wrong. So again, these are all super important terms to have in writing before you actually close on the sale. You just want to make sure that both parties are clear on the agreement, and these terms are in writing so that they can reference them should any disagreements arise throughout the term of that leaseback. And if there are any other particular terms that you see as important, make sure you get those in writing as well. But these are definitely some that you want to make sure you take care of. I hope this video was helpful. If you're looking to sell or buy in the St. Louis market, please don't hesitate to reach out. And even if you're not in the St. Louis market, or if you're moving out of the St. Louis market, still reach out. We would love to tap into our global network of agents and help you get set up with the right one. Please like, follow, and share this with somebody who might be interested.